I never thought I'd find myself in this position, writing a story about betrayal, but here I am. My name is Jake, and I was married to Lisa for 8 years. We had what I thought was a solid relationship. We met in college, fell in love, and built a life together. We had a modest home, a dog named Max, and dreams of starting a family. But like many fairy tales, the cracks started to show beneath the surface, and I was too blind to see them. At first, it was just subtle changes. Lisa started coming home later from work more frequently. She'd say it was the new project she was working on, something about a big presentation at the end of the month. I was supportive, of course. I wanted her to succeed in her career. That was part of what I loved about her. But then there were the little things, the way she'd check her phone constantly, the secretive behavior when I'd walk into the room, and the random perfume that wasn't hers lingering in the air when she came home. I brushed it off, convinced I was just being paranoid. But one Friday evening, everything changed. I came home early from work, excited to surprise her with dinner. I had gone to her favorite restaurant and picked up some takeout. As I walked in, I noticed the house was unusually quiet. I called out her name, but there was no response. It felt off, like something was wrong. I set the food down on the kitchen counter and went to our bedroom, half expecting her to be getting ready for a night out. Instead, I found her phone lying on the bed. It buzzed with a new message notification. Curiosity got the better of me and I picked it up. I knew I shouldn't have, but something compelled me to look. I opened the messages and my heart dropped. There it was, a conversation between Lisa and a guy named Brian, a firefighter I'd heard her mention a few times but didn't think much of. They shared a level of intimacy that made my stomach churn. Flirty texts turned into suggestive messages, and then I found it, the damning evidence of their affair. She wrote about how she couldn't wait to see him, how much she enjoyed their time together, and how she missed him when he was on duty. I felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath my feet. My whole world shattered in that moment. I dropped the phone like it was on fire and stumbled out of the room. I couldn't believe it. Lisa, my wife, was cheating on me with a man I barely knew. The initial shock turned to anger, and then a wave of sadness crashed over me. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made for our relationship, the love I had given her, and how I had never once betrayed her trust. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have ever imagined. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I waited for her to come home, packing the floor like a lion trapped in a cage. When she finally walked in, I confronted her. My voice was steady, but inside I was boiling over. "We need to talk about Brian," I said, my voice low and controlled. Lisa's face went pale, and I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes. She tried to play it cool, but I wasn't going to let her weasel out of this. "What are you talking about?" she asked, feigning innocence, but I wasn't having it. I laid it all out, the messages, the lies, everything. Her reaction was a mix of anger and defensiveness. "You're reading too much into it, Jake. He's just a friend, nothing more." She insisted, but I could see the cracks in her story. It was the same rehearsed line I had heard in movies, a classic script. I pushed back, reminding her how her friendship was clearly more than that. The confrontation spiraled into chaos, filled with accusations and denials. I was angry and she was desperate to deflect. She lied and lied, trying to make it seem like I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew the truth. The truth stung like a fresh wound, and every word she spoke felt like a shard of glass cutting through my heart. As the reality of the situation set in, I started to feel the emotional weight of it all. I went from shock and fury to a deep sadness, the kind that wraps around you like a heavy blanket. How could she do this to me? How could she betray everything we had built together? My mind raced, flooded with memories of our happier times, which now felt tainted. The pain of betrayal was palpable and I could hardly breathe. But in that moment of despair, something shifted inside me. I was tired of being the victim in my own story. I had been wronged and I needed to take control of my life again. I made a decision then and there. I was going to do something about this. As I sat in the dim light of our living room, the weight of betrayal still heavy on my chest, I started to formulate a plan. I wouldn't let her get away with this. I would make sure that Brian never came near her again. I would ensure that the flames of their affair were extinguished, once and for all. But how? That was the question that would guide my next moves. Now I had a path ahead of me, a dark one that would require cunning and determination. But I was ready to step into the shadows if it meant reclaiming what was rightfully mine. I was going to make Lisa understand the depths of her betrayal, to show her the consequences of her actions, and to ensure that Brian was far removed from our lives. Little did I know, the path I chose would lead me deeper into a web of intrigue and revenge than I could have ever anticipated. After that fateful confrontation, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me: anger, sadness, and the strange thrill of plotting my next move. I spent the night tossing and turning, unable to shake the feeling of betrayal that had lodged itself in my gut. The sight of Lisa sleeping peacefully next to me, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me, felt like a cruel joke. I had to act, and I had to act fast. The following day, I started gathering information about Brian. I needed to know everything: where he worked, his schedule, and any potential weaknesses I could exploit. I didn't have to dig too deep. Lisa had spoken about him more than once, always in a light-hearted manner, mentioning how he was a hero who saved lives daily. To her, he was charming and adventurous. To me, he was an obstacle in my marriage, a man who had no idea of the havoc he was wreaking on our lives. I did a little online sleuthing and discovered that Brian worked at a fire station not far from our town. A quick search revealed that he was well liked in the community, a local hero who had helped save a family from a burning home just last month. He had a reputation, and I knew that would make it more challenging, but not impossible. I decided the best course of action was to start spreading rumors about him. I figured the more people questioned his character, the more trouble he'd be in at work, and ultimately that would lead to him being transferred. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but the thought of Lisa continuing to see him was unbearable. I had to make his presence in our lives disappear. Over the next week, I began to put my plan into motion. I casually brought up Brian's name in conversations with friends and acquaintances. I painted him as a flirt, someone who couldn't be trusted. At the local bar, I overheard two friends discussing a recent fire. I chimed in, casually mentioning that I'd heard that Brian was seen at a bar the night before, drinking heavily and flirting with women. It was a small lie, but it spread like wildfire. Before I knew it, whispers of Brian's questionable behavior began circulating within our tight-knit community. I was surprised at how easy it was to manipulate perceptions. People loved a good story, and I gave them just enough to pique their interest. I made sure to drop hints here and there: how he'd been too friendly with one of the paramedics, how he seemed to have a wandering eye. It felt wrong to be doing this, but the thought of Lisa continuing her affair overshadowed any guilt I might have felt. I found a twisted sense of satisfaction in watching the seeds of doubt sprout. As the rumors spread, I noticed a change in the air. Lisa began to act more distant, her phone buzzing more frequently with texts she quickly dismissed. I could see the stress creeping into her once happy demeanor. It was working, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of control over my life. I wanted her to realize the consequences of her actions, the mess she had created, not just for me, but for herself. Then came the day that would change everything. I was at home when I received a call from a mutual friend, Sarah, who worked at the local hospital. She sounded urgent and a little too excited for my taste. "Jake, you won't believe what just happened. They're moving Brian to a station far away. I heard it from a coworker who knows the chief. Apparently all the rumors have gotten to him, and they can't have that kind of distraction on the team." My heart raced. This was what I wanted, but I hadn't expected it to happen so soon. "What kind of rumors?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Oh, just the usual stuff: flirting, drinking on duty, that sort of thing. It's a shame. He was a good guy," she said, but I could tell she was relishing the gossip. I hung up the phone feeling a mix of triumph and anxiety. Part of me felt guilty for what I had done, but the other part reveled in my success. Brian would be far away, perhaps even out of Lisa's life for good. But the thought of how Lisa would react when she learned the news gnawed at me. Would she be upset? Would she blame me? That evening, I decided to break the news. To her, I could already see the tension in her eyes as she walked through the door, the shadows of guilt still hanging over her. I had planned my words carefully. I wanted to make her squirm just a little. "Hey Lisa, did you hear about Brian?" I asked casually as I set dinner on the table. Her eyes widened, the color draining from her face. "What about him?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light but failing miserably. I feigned surprise, leaning back in my chair. "I was just talking to Sarah and she mentioned he's being transferred to a station hours away. Apparently, he's been causing a bit of drama at the firehouse." The disbelief on her face was almost satisfying. "That can't be right," she stammered. "He's a great firefighter. They wouldn't just transfer him for nothing." I shrugged, maintaining my nonchalant demeanor. "I guess the rumors caught up with him. People talk, you know." The anger flared in her eyes, and for a moment I felt a rush of satisfaction wash over me. "You're the one who's been spreading rumors, haven't you?" she shouted, her voice rising. "This is all your fault." I didn't flinch. "Maybe if you hadn't been so careless with your actions, this wouldn't have happened." I watched her face contort with a mix of anger and despair. It was clear she was grappling with the reality of the situation, and I felt an unsettling sense of vindication. She stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I could hear her muffled cries through the wall, and for a moment I regretted pushing her so far. But then I remembered the betrayal, the way she had lied to my face, and I steeled myself against any lingering guilt. I was in control now, and I could see the unraveling of her carefully constructed facade. The game was shifting, and I was ready to play to win. The next steps were crucial, and I needed to stay one step ahead. Little did I know, this would lead to more than just a fight for my marriage. It would expose the darker sides of both Lisa and Brian, and perhaps even myself along the way. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and tension. The atmosphere in our home had shifted dramatically. Lisa seemed to be on edge, her anger simmering just below the surface. It was clear she was spiraling, struggling to cope with the fallout of Brian's impending transfer. She didn't speak much, and when she did, it was often laced with bitter accusations aimed at me. "How could you do this?" she hissed one night as we sat in silence across from each other at the dinner table. "You're ruining my life." Her eyes were filled with anger, but I could also see the cracks of desperation. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "I'm not ruining anything. You did that all on your own when you decided to cheat on me. Remember that." Her face flushed, and for a moment I thought she might cry. Instead, she gritted her teeth, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. "You're taking everything from me, Jake. I was just starting to find happiness again, and you had to go and ruin it." I wanted to scream at her, to lay bare the betrayal that she had inflicted upon me. But instead I kept my cool, determined to stick to my plan. "Happiness with someone else? You mean with Brian? Is that what you call happiness?" I pushed, knowing I was hitting a nerve. Lisa's expression hardened, and I could see the anger bubbling up inside her. "I don't have to explain myself to you. You wouldn't understand. You're too busy being a jealous husband instead of trying to make things better." The words stung, and I felt a flash of pain, but I wouldn't let her see it. I had to stay strong. I couldn't afford to show weakness when I was on the brink of finally regaining control over my life. "Better? You think this is something I can just fix? You've destroyed us, Lisa. I'm just trying to pick up the pieces." The silence that followed was deafening. We both stared at each other, each waiting for the other to back down. I could see the war within her. She was fighting to keep her pride intact, and I was fighting to not let her manipulate me any further. After what felt like an eternity, she finally broke the silence. "I can't believe you would stoop so low, spreading rumors like a coward. It's pathetic, Jake." I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. "What's pathetic is your willingness to throw away everything we built for some thrill with a firefighter." The argument spiraled into the usual pattern of blame and anger, but I felt a shift within me. I had gone from being the betrayed husband to someone who was willing to take control of the narrative. I was no longer going to sit idly by while my life crumbled around me. I had taken the first step, but I needed to escalate my plan to ensure Brian wouldn't be able to come back into our lives. With Brian being transferred, I knew I had to act quickly. I needed to ensure that he couldn't return to the area either, even if he somehow managed to get transferred back. So I set my sights on a more direct approach. I wanted to expose him for the kind of man he was, to everyone, not just me. I managed to get a hold of some of Brian's coworkers through social media and mutual friends. I had learned that he was well liked, but I was determined to change that narrative. The more I dug into his past, the more I realized I could manipulate the story to my advantage. I found out he had a minor drug-related charge from several years ago that had been dismissed, but it was still enough to tarnish his reputation if brought to light. One evening, I attended a gathering at a mutual friend's house, and I seized the opportunity to plant the seeds of doubt. I casually mentioned that I'd heard a rumor about Brian's past, how he had faced some legal issues before he became a firefighter. I dressed it up as a concern for our community, a hero with a dark past. People were intrigued, and the more I spoke, the more they leaned in, eager to hear about this hidden truth. Isn't it crazy how you can find out things about people you think you know? Like someone could be saving lives all day but have their own skeletons in the closet. I said, my tone filled with faux concern. The reaction was immediate. My friends began to murmur among themselves, their expressions shifting from disbelief to intrigue. I could see the curiosity flickering in their eyes. It was a perfect blend of gossip and concern. For community safety, I knew that this would only add fuel to the fire of the rumors already surrounding Brian and would solidify my plan to ensure he was pushed out of our lives for good. After that gathering, I kept the momentum going. I spoke with more friends and acquaintances, and I made sure to mention Brian's so-called troubling past wherever it made sense. The whispers grew louder, and I could feel the shift happening. No longer was he viewed as the charming firefighter who saved lives. He was a man with questionable character who may not be worthy of the hero title. In the midst of all this, I noticed a change in Lisa. She was agitated, clearly feeling the pressure from the whispers circulating around town. She started to question her choices, and I took a twisted pleasure in watching her unravel. It was a dark satisfaction that fueled my resolve, the thrill of revenge pulsing through my veins. One night I arrived home late from work and found Lisa sitting on the couch, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mix of frustration and despair. "What have you done?" she demanded, her voice trembling as if she were on the verge of tears. "What do you mean?" I asked, feigning ignorance, but inside I felt a surge of triumph. "Everyone's talking about Brian. They think he's some kind of monster now. You've ruined him," she shouted, the pain evident in her voice. I took a moment, letting her words sink in, savoring the moment of her realization. Maybe if you hadn't been so careless in your own actions, this wouldn't have happened. "I'm not the one who put your choices on display, Lisa." She stood up furious, her hands balled into fists. "You think this is funny? You think tearing down someone else will make you feel better? You're just as bad as he is." "No, I'm not. I'm protecting what's mine. You made your choice and I'm just making sure you understand the consequences," I replied, my voice low but steady. The tension between us was electric, and I could see that she was at a breaking point. Part of me felt sorry for her, but the larger part reveled in my newfound power. In that moment, it became clear. I wasn't just trying to get rid of Brian. I was forcing Lisa to confront the ugly reality of the choices she had made. I wanted her to see the destruction of her own actions reflected back at her. The thrill of revenge consumed me, and I found a dark sense of pleasure in the chaos that was unfolding. As the days turned into weeks, the fallout from my actions spread like wildfire, and I could feel the power shifting in my favor. But I also knew that this was only the beginning. I needed to ensure that Brian was gone for good, and that meant I had to continue my campaign against him. The stakes were rising, and I was more determined than ever to finish what I had started. As the weeks rolled by, I found myself fully entrenched in my revenge against Brian and the precarious situation with Lisa. The whispers about Brian's past were spreading like a contagion through our community. Every time I went out, I could feel people's eyes on me, the rumors swirling and mutating, morphing into a monstrous version of the truth. I was no longer just Jake, the husband betrayed. I was a player in a game that was spiraling out of control, and I was determined to win. Lisa seemed to be crumbling under the weight of it all. Her anger had simmered into a deep-seated resentment, and I could see her grappling with the consequences of her choices. The woman I had loved was slipping away, replaced by someone who was desperate and defensive. I often caught her staring blankly at her phone, waiting for a message from Brian that would never come. The silence between us had grown heavy, filled with unspoken tension and unresolved feelings. One evening, as I was scrolling through social media, I came across a post from a local news outlet. It was about Brian. The fire department was having a charity event, and Brian was prominently featured as one of the heroes of the community. My gut twisted in frustration. I couldn't let him reestablish himself as the local hero when I was working so hard to tear that image down. I decided to leverage this event to my advantage. The charity event was set for Saturday, and I realized it offered the perfect opportunity to confront Brian publicly. I could make a scene, expose the rumors I had been spreading, and solidify the whispers into a full-blown scandal. I had to act swiftly. That week, I began to stir up more trouble. I reached out to a few friends, suggesting that they attend the charity event. "You won't believe the things I've heard about Brian lately," I'd say, injecting just enough uncertainty to spark their curiosity. "You should come and see for yourself. I hear he's going to be there, acting all hero-like." By the time Friday rolled around, I had a small group of people who were eager to see what would transpire. I could tell they were excited, and I found myself reveling in the anticipation. It was a twisted kind of excitement, one that promised not just revenge but a chance to reclaim my honor in this tragic play of betrayal. On the day of the charity event, I dressed carefully, opting for a sharp blazer and dark jeans. I wanted to project confidence while simultaneously letting Lisa and the others know that I was in control. When I arrived at the venue, it was buzzing with energy. The atmosphere was a mix of hope and celebration, with families gathering to support a cause that none of us had anticipated would become the backdrop for my personal vendetta. I scanned the crowd, taking in the smiling faces, the laughter, and the camaraderie. But my focus was singular. I was there for Brian. I spotted him across the room, surrounded by a group of admirers, basking in the attention that came with being a local hero. His easy smile and confident posture only fueled my desire to dismantle the facade he had built. As the evening progressed, I approached a couple of friends who were already talking to Lisa. I caught her eye, and for a moment I sensed a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. I could see that she was caught off guard by my presence. She had been trying to distance herself from the chaos I had created, but now, here I was, ready to pull her back into the storm. "Hey, Lisa," I said, my voice casual as I joined the group. "Do you think we should go say hi to Brian? I mean, after all, he's been such a great friend to you lately." The words dripped with sarcasm, and I saw her eyes widen. In shock. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, her voice low and tense. "Oh, come on, everyone's been talking about him. You know, the rumors, the past, it's all out there," I continued, watching as the crowd around us began to take notice of our exchange. One of my friends chimed in. "Yeah, I heard he got into some trouble before he became a firefighter. Isn't it kind of odd that we're celebrating him now?" The murmurs spread through the crowd, and I could see Lisa's face flush with embarrassment. She tried to deflect, but I pressed on, knowing that this was the moment I had been waiting for. With a feigned innocence, I glanced over at Brian's group and raised my voice just enough to be heard. "Isn't it amazing how someone can be a hero one minute and have a history that could turn the community against him the next? Makes you wonder what else we don't know." The atmosphere shifted, the energy turning from celebratory to tense, as people began to look at Brian with a mix of curiosity and concern. I could see the realization dawning on Lisa's face as she finally grasped the extent of what I was doing. Suddenly, Lisa's expression hardened. "You're sick, Jake. You really are," she seethed, her voice barely above a whisper, but I could see the fury in her eyes. Ignoring her, I continued, "I think it's important that we all know who we're supporting. It's not just about the charity anymore, it's about accountability, isn't it?" Before Lisa could respond, I decided it was time to make my move. I walked straight towards Brian, who was still chatting with a group of supporters, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing behind him. I approached him with a confident swagger, my heart racing with adrenaline. "Hey, Brian," I called out, forcing a smile onto my face. The group turned to face me and I could see the confusion in Brian's eyes. "Jake," he said, his voice friendly but cautious. "What's up?" I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice as if sharing a secret. "Just wanted to have a word about the rumors flying around. You know how people can be." He looked at me, his expression shifting from confusion to wariness. "What rumors?" "Oh, you know the ones. About your past. The little hiccup you had before becoming a firefighter. People are starting to question your reputation," I said, watching his face pale. The atmosphere around us shifted again, the group growing quiet as they absorbed my words. I could see the embarrassment creeping into Brian's demeanor as he realized what was happening. I was reveling in the power I felt, the thrill of turning the tide against him. "Jake, that's not." "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, trying to regain control of the situation, but I could see the cracks forming. "Come on, Brian, don't play dumb. We both know it's out there," I said with a smirk. "And the community deserves to know who they're supporting, right?" Before he could respond, I felt a hand gripping my shoulder. It was Lisa, her voice a hiss as she pulled me aside. "What are you doing? You can't just attack him like this." "Why not?" "He's the one who decided to come between us," I shot back, my anger flaring. "Because this isn't going to solve anything. You're just making it worse," she pleaded, desperation evident in her tone, but I was far too gone, drunk on the chaos I had created. "I'm making sure he can't hurt us anymore. This is the only way to put an end to this." The scene around us had drawn the attention of others, and I could feel the tension building. Lisa was losing her grip, and I could see that I had crossed a line. But in that moment, I didn't care. I wanted Brian to feel the pressure, to know that I wouldn't let him take my wife or my life from me. As the event continued, the atmosphere had shifted from one of celebration to one of uncertainty. I watched as people began to murmur amongst themselves, their eyes darting between Brian and me. I had successfully planted the seeds of doubt, and I could feel the power of the crowd starting to turn against him. For the first time since this whole ordeal had begun, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I was no longer the victim. I was the one calling the shots. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this might be spiraling out of control. I was caught in a web of my own making, and I was starting to wonder how deep I was willing to go to destroy Brian and reclaim my life from Lisa's betrayal. As I left the event, I glanced back at Brian, who stood there looking lost and exposed, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. But as I turned to walk away, a small voice in my head reminded me that the consequences of this night were far from over. I was playing a dangerous game, and I couldn't help but wonder how it would all end. The fallout from that charity event was immediate and intense. In the days that followed, the whispers I had started only grew louder. The entire community seemed to be buzzing with gossip about Brian and the rumors of his past. I watched as Lisa spiraled into an emotional turmoil I had never seen before. The woman who had once been my partner in life was now a shell of her former self, consumed by the chaos I had unleashed. I could sense her anger aimed at me, but there was also a hint of fear mixed in. I was no longer just the husband she had betrayed. I had become a source of instability in her life, a catalyst for the very storm that was tearing us apart. And while part of me reveled in the chaos I had caused, I also felt a pang of guilt. Lisa was not the only one who had made mistakes, and I was starting to wonder if I had crossed a line that I could never uncross. It was a Thursday evening when I came home to find Lisa sitting on the couch, her face drawn and pale. She looked up at me with a mix of anger and desperation. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for what was about to unfold. I had prepared for this moment. I knew she would confront me sooner or later. "About what?" I asked, keeping my tone even. "About Brian. You can't keep doing this." She spat, the frustration evident in her words. "You think you're helping, but you're just making everything worse. People are starting to look at me like I'm the bad guy here. Maybe you should have thought about that before. You decided to cheat on me," I retorted, my anger flaring again. "Is this really about Brian, or is this about you wanting to feel like you have control over something? You're destroying my life, Jake." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I felt a flicker of compassion. "Lisa, I'm trying to protect myself. I'm trying to protect us." I insisted, but the conviction in my voice sounded weaker than I intended. "By tearing down someone else." "That's not protection, that's revenge," she shot back, her voice rising. "You've lost sight of what's important. This isn't just about you and me anymore. This is affecting our entire community." I could see her point, but I was too deep in my own feelings of betrayal to back down now. "I just want you to understand the consequences of your actions. You made this choice." She sighed, running a hand through her hair in frustration. "And so did you, but this isn't going to fix anything. It's just going to keep tearing us apart." I opened my mouth to argue, but her words struck a chord. Deep down, I knew she was right, yet the anger I felt toward her and Brian pushed me to continue down this path of destruction. "What do you want me to do, Lisa? Just let him walk away unscathed after what he did? Let's just get out of this mess together," she pleaded. "We can work on us. I'll end it with Brian. Just stop this madness." For a moment, I was taken aback. The idea of working on our marriage, of trying to build something anew, had been pushed to the back of my mind. I was so consumed by revenge that I hadn't really considered what reconciliation might look like. But as I looked into her eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was too late for that. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Lisa. You've broken that trust," I replied, my voice quieter now as doubt crept in. "Then let me prove it to you," she implored, desperation seeping into her tone. "I'll end things with him. I'll show you I want to be with you. But please stop this. You're hurting everyone involved." I felt the weight of her words pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that we could fix this. But the other part, the part that was still reeling from the betrayal, held me back. "And what if he comes back? What if you still want him?" "That's not how this works. I made a mistake and I want to fix it. I don't want him. I want you." Her sincerity washed over me like a wave, and I stepped back, grappling with my emotions. I had been so focused on my plan for revenge that I hadn't truly considered what would happen if we tried to rebuild. But even as I wavered, a darker part of me couldn't resist the pull of vengeance. Then, just as I was about to respond, my phone buzzed. It was a message from one of my friends, someone who had attended the charity event. "Jake, you should know that Brian just got suspended from the fire department. People are saying it's because of those rumors you spread." My heart raced, a mix of satisfaction and guilt flooding through me. I had succeeded in pushing Brian out, but at what cost? I looked at Lisa, who was now staring at me, her expression a blend of disbelief and horror. "What did you do?" she breathed. I didn't mean for it to go this far," I said, the weight of my actions crashing down on me. "I thought if I made people question him, it would keep him away from you. But you ruined his life, Jake. You took it too far." She reacted, her voice rising in panic. I felt the reality of my actions crashing down on me. I had wanted to push Brian away, but I hadn't considered the consequences of my actions beyond that. The community depended on him. He was a respected member, a firefighter who had dedicated his life to saving others. Now I had tarnished that reputation with my petty revenge. "Maybe he deserves it for what he did to us." I tried to defend myself, but even I could hear the weakness in my argument. "Or maybe we both do. You're not a hero for doing this. You're just as bad as he is," she shouted, her voice raw with emotion. In that moment, I realized that I had become the villain in my own story. I had let my anger consume me, and I had played into the very role I had been trying to avoid. The truth was that I was hurting not just Brian, but Lisa too, and by extension myself. "Lisa, I need to fix this," I said, my voice trembling. "I need to make things right." She looked at me, and for the first time I saw something break inside her. "Jake, I don't know if you can fix this. You've done a lot of damage." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been so focused on my revenge that I hadn't considered what the future would hold for us. If I wanted to salvage our relationship, I needed to confront the mess I had created. I needed to take responsibility, not just for my actions, but for the pain I had caused. "Let's go talk to Brian," I suggested, the weight of my decision settling heavily on my shoulders. Lisa's eyes widened in shock, but I pressed on. "We need to confront this together. If I've ruined his life, we need to find a way to make amends. I can't keep living like this." As I spoke, a sense of clarity washed over me. I didn't want to be the man driven by revenge. I wanted to be the man willing to make things right, even if it meant facing my worst fears. I wanted to break free from the cycle of pain and betrayal, and if that meant confronting Brian, then so be it. Okay, Lisa said cautiously, her voice small. But you have to promise me that this is about fixing things, not making it worse. I promise, I replied, though a part of me still recoiled at the thought of facing Brian. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and I was terrified of what would happen when the three of us came together. But I was determined to end this chapter of my life and find a way forward, no matter how painful it might be. As we prepared to meet Brian, I felt a mixture of dread and hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew it was the only way to heal the wounds that had been festering for far too long. I had to confront the consequences of my actions and take the first step toward rebuilding, not just my relationship with Lisa, but also my own sense of integrity. The outcome was still a mystery, but I was ready to face whatever awaited us. I had to believe that redemption was possible, both for me and for the lives I had affected. With a sense of trepidation, Lisa and I drove to the fire station where Brian worked. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea how this confrontation would play out, but I was determined to face the consequences of my actions head-on. If I truly wanted to rebuild my life with Lisa, I had to confront the man who had become a symbol of my betrayal. When we arrived, I took a deep breath to steady my nerves. The fire station was bustling with activity, but all I could focus on was the task at hand. Lisa looked nervous beside me, her fingers fidgeting in her lap. "Are you sure about this?" she asked hesitantly, and I could see the worry etched on her face. "Yes," I said, my voice firm despite the turmoil inside me. "We need to do this." As we walked toward the entrance, I recalled the whispers that had circulated about Brian. I thought about the damage I'd caused, the rumors I had spread that had led to his suspension. I had to make amends, not just for my sake but for Lisa as well. It was time to take responsibility for the chaos I had created. We approached the front desk, and I could see a couple of firefighters chatting nearby. I caught Brian's eye from across the room, and for a moment time seemed to freeze. He looked up, surprise registering on his face as he saw us. Slowly he began to walk toward us, his expression shifting from confusion to wariness. "Jake, Lisa," he said, his tone cautious. "What are you doing here?" I felt a knot in my stomach as I prepared to speak. "We need to talk," I said, trying to maintain eye contact. I could see the tension in his posture, the way he instinctively straightened as he prepared for a confrontation. "What's there to talk about?" he replied, his voice guarded. "You've made it pretty clear how you feel about me." "I know," I said, my voice steadying as I pressed on. "And for that I'm sorry. I let my anger and jealousy consume me, and I crossed a line I shouldn't have." Brian's expression softened just slightly, but I could see the hurt still lingering beneath the surface. "You ruined my reputation in this community, Jake. I was working hard to earn the respect of the people here, and you took that away from me." "I know," I said, feeling the weight of my actions crash down on me. "And I take full responsibility for that. I was wrong to spread those rumors, and I want to make it right." Lisa stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Brian, I just want to say that I ended things with you. I was caught up in a moment of weakness, and I want to focus on rebuilding my marriage with Jake. But I don't want you to suffer because of my mistakes." Brian's eyes flickered between us, and I could see the conflict within him. "You both made choices," he said quietly. "I never wanted to hurt either of you." "I know," I replied, my heart pounding, "and I'm sorry for what I've done. I want to find a way to move forward, not just for our sake, but for yours too. If there's anything I can do to help repair the damage I've caused, I'm willing to do it." For a moment, there was silence, the weight of our conversation hanging heavily in the air. Brian studied us, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "I appreciate you coming here and saying that," he said finally, his voice more measured. "But I'm going to need time to figure this out. You can't just erase what happened." "I understand," I said, feeling a sense of relief that at least we were talking. "I just want you to know that I never intended for it to go this far. I let my emotions get the best of me, and I realize now how destructive that can be." Lisa nodded in agreement. "We both made mistakes, and I hope we can all find a way to move on from this. I never wanted to hurt you." Brian looked between us, and I could see the tension in his shoulders slowly easing. "Okay," he said finally. "Let's take this one step at a time. I'm willing to talk things through, but it's going to take a lot of work to rebuild trust, not just between us, but for the community too." I felt a surge of gratitude wash over me. This was the first step toward healing, not just for Brian and me, but for Lisa as well. Maybe we could find a way to repair the damage, to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. "Thank you," I said, my voice sincere. "I know this won't be easy, but I'm committed to making it right." As we exchanged contact information, I felt a strange sense of liberation. I had faced the consequences of my actions, and while I knew there was a long road ahead, I finally felt a glimmer of hope. The darkness that had consumed me for so long was beginning to lift, and I realized that I had the power to change my narrative. As we left the fire station, I turned to Lisa. "We did it," I said, a mix of relief and uncertainty flooding through me. "We faced him." She smiled softly, though I could still see the pain in her eyes. "Yeah, and now we have to face our own issues together. It's not going to be easy." "I know," I replied, "but I'm ready to put in the work. I want us to heal." We embarked on the journey back home, and as we drove, I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would require honesty, communication, and vulnerability. The road ahead might be filled with challenges, but I was determined to navigate it with Lisa by my side. As we entered our home, I glanced around at the familiar surroundings that had once felt so suffocating. Now, they held the promise of healing and growth. I knew from this point forward, both Lisa and I would have to confront our past mistakes and work hard to rebuild our relationship. In the end, I had learned that revenge was a fleeting satisfaction. True strength lay in vulnerability and the willingness to confront the truth. No matter how painful it might be, I had faced my demons, and now it was time to forge a new path, one that would lead us toward redemption and a fresh start. We had a long way to go, but together, I believed we could overcome anything. This was just the beginning of our journey toward healing.